What was the strangest rule you had to respect at a friend's house? Story 1. A good friend of mine went through a season where he didn't have running water at his house, so the rule in the house was that no one could come over unless they brought a couple gallons of water with them to pour into the toilet in the event that they had to poop. The part that made it even more shitty is that while there was no running water there, his mom would stay at her sugar daddy's house, so my friend was there all alone. Story 2. My friend wasn't allowed in her room unless she was sleeping or changing her clothes. She also wasn't allowed to shower for more than 10 minutes. The same rules applied to her brother. He was also locked out of his room and was forced to take cold showers. All this to prevent them from masturbating. This is a surefire way to make overly sexual kids. Story 3. Parents waking us up at like 7 a.m. to make us do chores. Had another friend whose parents were so strict that he often got grounded in the middle of play dates and sleepovers. His parents were wealthy, and he always had the cool toys and electronics, but he was constantly grounded from them. That moment when you're at a friend's house and they get in trouble, and for some reason the parents don't give a fudge how crazy they look screaming in front of another unrelated kid. Most awkward incident was when my friend and I were just casually talking about some new Nintendo game while his mom was driving us somewhere, and at one point she was like, "Tim, you've been playing too many video games lately. You're grounded." Welp, there goes our plan for the afternoon. Story 4. Being a young man and forced to sit while peeing in their house. And the dad stayed in the bathroom to make sure. Weird. Now that I think of it, was I molested? Story 5. When I was around 8, we tried to be playmates with a boy down the street. His parents seemed nice enough to our faces, but were apparently very controlling behind the scenes. The Legos were the biggest standout that comes to mind after all these decades. He had the normal amount of Legos for kids our age, but they were kept in those organizers with a bunch of hard plastic drawers with dividers. Each type of brick had its own place in its own drawer, and each drawer was meticulously labeled with an old-school Dymo label maker. Different colors of bricks had their own organizers. He was deathly afraid to take any of them out of their drawers to actually play with them, because apparently even having too many out and assembled at one time would get him into pretty serious trouble. The friendship kind of sputtered out despite the propinquity. Story 6. No coughing in the kitchen. It doesn't matter that the kitchen was huge, at least 20 feet by 20 feet, or if you covered your mouth. And this was 25 years before COVID. I learned the hard way one Thanksgiving. As an invited guest at my friend's house, I naturally entered the kitchen to ask if her mother needed any help. A sudden tickle hit the back of my throat and I coughed to clear it. Her mother gave me the look of death, turned around, picked up the tray with the cooked turkey on it and proceeded to throw it in the garbage. I was mortified. I ended up leaving shortly after. Story 7. When I was like 11 or 12, I slept over at one of my friend's houses. I had to go to bed at 8:30 on the dot, and her mom would walk in the bedroom every 15 minutes to make sure we were asleep and not talking. I didn't have a phone, so it wasn't like I could occupy myself. I told her mom that it is hard for me to fall asleep that early, and asked if I could hang out outside of the room for a bit until I was tired. Nope, I had to go to bed at 8:30, because I was invited and therefore, I need to follow their rules. I stopped having sleepovers there, and started having them with another neighborhood girl, because we had a lot more freedom. The other friend's mom got mad at me for staying over at another friend's house rather than her daughter's. This just reminded me about my friend's 16th birthday party. There was about 6 of us in a tent in her backyard. They had a little property, and we stayed up really late playing truth or dare and other silly games. The next morning at 7 a.m. her stepmom woke us up by spraying us with the hose as revenge for waking stepmom and dad with our giggling. Then the birthday girl had to make us pancakes, even though we were too tired to eat, and she didn't get to eat until she cleaned up all the dishes from making pancakes, then had to wash our dishes from breakfast. Her stepmom was a beep. Story 8. I grew up homeschooled up until my first year of high school. Let me tell you, I met a lot of really cool people with awesome families, but also a lot of really strange families. Homeschooling can be great until it's used for the wrong reasons, which in my experience is shockingly common. A list of weird rules I had to follow while over at different houses within homeschooling groups I was a part of. 1. No red nail polish. Her daughters couldn't paint their nails red or even wear the color red. If we were going to come over, we had to remove any red nail polish and wear non-sexual colors. 2. Could not say, "Oh my gosh," because it sounded too much like "oh my God" and it's a sin to take God's name in vain. 3. We needed to cover our shoulders before her brothers, and especially her father, returned home. 4. Not a rule that I personally had to follow, but one family banned the use of Crest toothpaste. Their parents had something against the brand. 5. Was not allowed to be alone in the same rooms as my friend's father. As an adult I get why, but at the time I confused. 6. One family I knew wasn't allowed to listen to music that their father didn't like. Not because he didn't like it because it was anti-Christian, he simply just didn't like the sound. They couldn't buy albums or download songs that he wouldn't listen to himself. They were able to listen to a lot of 80s stuff, which isn't a problem, but like, come on. 7. Could not address her parents as anything other than yes sir or yes ma'am. Story 9. As a single parent with 3 young children, I used to have a nanny come help out and occasionally she would bring her son. One day as I was picking up my children, the nanny's son farted, and she made him stand in the corner. He was only allowed to fart in the bathroom. He was 4. I just asked my kids if she ever punished them for farting. They said she never mentioned anything to them, but they remember the kid always getting in trouble for farting. Story 10. When I was like 8 years old, I was playing at a friend's house in his room upstairs. Needed to go to the bathroom, so went for a pee in the toilet that was upstairs. His mom heard me from downstairs in the living room, I don't know how. She was probably eavesdropping. Then I was yelled at while peeing that this toilet was not for daytime peeing, nighttime only for some reason. So, his mom yelled and demanded the 8-year-old me to stop mid-pee, run downstairs, and finish on the daytime toilet. Never was invited again. Still to this day, I don't have a clue what went on there and still have so many unanswered questions. Why is it that whenever a home has weird toilet rules, they never make them known in advance? Oh, the bathroom door randomly pops open. That toilet doesn't flush completely unless you hold it down for 5 seconds. This one you can pee in but not poop. Just post a damn sign. Story 11. It wasn't a really rule of the house, but my friend's parents were huge helicopter parents. Went to a concert with a friend and we had to call, not text, her parents every hour to let them know we were okay. We were 21 and 22 and I was close friends with the band we were seeing play. Her parents also made us call every 30 minutes when we, 2 adult women, I was 24 and she was 25, went bar hopping with a group of friends. Like I told my own parents today that I might drive 4.5 hours to go see some friends at a music festival, and they were like, sweet, have fun. Let me know how it goes. But yet she's still calling her parents when she drives across town to see me. Story 12. When I was 8, I used to visit a friend that had a dog. I never actually got to meet the dog because when we came over, they would lock it up in a wood box. The dog never barked and I couldn't see inside the box. All I ever saw was the extremely large dog poop. They had an old pool that was empty except for pine needles, pine cones, and the dog poop that got swept into it. It smelled awful, but me and my friend used to play tag/hide-and-seek around it. At one point I stepped on one of the many piles of poop. My friend told me to take my shoes off and yelled for his mom. She came out, took my shoes, and put them in the trash bin. Then I was told it was the rules that if you stepped on dog poop, the shoes had to be thrown away instead of washing them off. As a kid, I remember being only slightly sad about the shoes, but playing tag with landmines was just another fun way to spice up the game. Eventually, I was told we were not allowed to play in the back anymore because the dog was getting upset and she even boarded up the back porch so we couldn't sneak out there. I never stepped in poop again, but I also never saw or heard the dog. Story 13. My friend's dad was a huge egomaniac and super controlling. He basically brainwashed his family into believing that he was a great genius and so he was the king of the family. The big rule was that no one was allowed to open food unless he did it first. Like if a bag of chips was in the pantry, no one could eat any until he decided to open the bag. No one could take a slice of pizza until he did first. Everyone was expected to observe the rule and they acted like it was perfectly normal. Story 14. We had to finish all the milk in the cereal bowl. Like every drop. But we weren't allowed to pick up the bowl or be noisy. Imagine 3 little kids carefully trying to drink milk from a spoon without slurping or scraping the bowl while one scary mom watched us in silence. Story 15. I was around 8 when I went to a friend's place for a playdate and asked for a cup of water. My friend's mom pulls out one of the biggest glasses 8-year-old me had seen and filled it to the brim. I was only used to the small plastic cups at this stage so was not used to such a large amount of water. After drinking just over 1/4 of the glass, I went to go pour it out because I didn't want the rest, I was full. My friend stopped me and said that we weren't allowed to pour out water, we had to drink it. 8-year-old me thought that was weird, but looking back, sure, good way to teach kids not to waste water, especially here in Australia where droughts are so common. So, if I wasn't allowed to pour it out, what could I do with it? I thought I would just leave it for later. My friend once again stopped me and explained I wasn't allowed to leave it, I had to drink it all. I said I wasn't thirsty anymore when her mum walked in and told me that water wasn't allowed to be wasted in this house and I better drink it all. Like right then and there. If you wanted water, you weren't allowed to leave it and come back later. You had to sit there and finish it. 8-year-old me tried to argue why I couldn't leave it for later, and the mum got pissed and had me sit at the kitchen bench stool and finish this massive glass. I sat there grumpily for ages trying to finish this thing so I could go back to playing. I remember getting really uncomfortable because I needed to pee, and sure enough immediately afterwards I was dashing to the toilet. I get teaching kids not to just waste water but let them leave it to come back later, it's water, it won't spoil and they will drink it later.